Hello, beautiful, and welcome to the Moms Talks Sex podcast. I'm your host, Maura Yelvington of Morph Transform Your Reality, where I help women step out of trauma and reclaim their power. I'm so happy to have you here for this open conversation about moms, sex, motherhood, children, relationships, marriage, and everything in between. So grab your drink of choice and let's dive in. And I have the beautiful Shelby here in the house. Hi, Shelby.
Hello, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here and talk with you.
Thank you for being here and sharing your story with us. So we just dive in. Why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you?
Of course. Yes. So I am Shelby St Clair. I am the CEO and founder of the Boss Lady Agency. I help women who are dealing with fears, limiting beliefs, have experienced past trauma to really reclaim their power and step into the purest, most authentic, highest version of themselves that doesn't allow life to knock them down, but just keeps on moving through and heading on their way to claim their version of their success that is their absolute birthright. So really, I'm helping women in business break generational chains. And I got here through a very interesting journey of all the things, which you can learn all about if you want to know that back end story. I'm sure we'll have links to my website or Instagram, but I think really what we're here to talk about is like relationships, right? And my journey of relationships is so interesting because I found myself married to somebody that I barely knew at the age of 20 because I was trying to escape and find myself or really claim my own life after growing up in a cult-like religion and just really having a mentality programmed in me that I have to live a certain way and abide by certain rules and only be with somebody that was in that same religion and just live a life where you wake up, go to work, get a paycheck, go home, and like you just do the same thing every single day. And it just is what it is. And shortly after being in this marriage, within 30 days, I knew that it was a terrible idea because the abuse had stopped. At this point, I actually had been pulled, me and my mom actually were pulled out of my house with guns in our face by a SWAT team because my ex-husband had gotten so drunk that he broke into a neighbor's house and there was blood trailing from that house to our house. And I hadn't even known about that until I was pulled out of my house the next morning while he was in the emergency room having surgery. That's what had happened. I had just, experienced the mirrors being thrown at me and everything in the house being broken. And so I knew that this was a terrible idea. And, my parents had seen this occurrence, but I was so terrified to say that I know this is bad and this is a reoccurring thing that I'm seeing in only 30 days that I need to get out of it. I was so terrified to actually say that because I was scared of being judged. I was scared of being judged by my family. I was scared of being judged by my friends for just jumping into a relationship with somebody that I didn't know, but who sold me the fairy tale dream life and everything that he said that he would bring me and add to my life. And so it took me 5 years to get out of that relationship. And it's crazy because when you're in a relationship like that, you can make everything look so great on the outside, right? Nobody would have known because on the outside, when we would get together with friends or family, it was like, oh, this perfect couple who has this perfect life and bought this big house and is running a successful business and all these things, right? Like the American dream on the outside, but internally, like there was so much going on in the relationship and there was so much wrong. And I was losing myself and I was literally internally dying because I was fighting myself, right? My truth of what I knew I needed to do, but the fear of what would come from it. And so once that 5-year mark came, and I had been asking for months, like, just give me a sign, right? Just give me a sign that like I can leave and everything will be okay. And finally, it was just one argument that it was like, okay, this is the solidifying factor. And the divorce word was dropped. And I was like, that's it. Like, we're not having this conversation anymore. I'm leaving. And the next morning, I packed up my stuff. I put my 5 fur babies in my car and I drove home crying, calling my mom and say, I'm moving back home and I'm getting a divorce. And that was really hard. It was really, really hard. And, the abuse emotionally and mentally didn't stop after the divorce because he was still doing things and reaching out and infiltrating my friends and getting into people's heads and spreading all these things. And I just had to really stand up for myself and ask, who is Shelby? Who is Shelby outside of all these beliefs that were placed within me? Who shall be outside of all these programs that were placed within me of who I had to be? And I started to discover myself. And I started to not care about everyone else. Because at the end of the day, I realized that everybody is going to make up their own mind, no matter what I did to try and prove myself, right? They've already decided their side. They've already created the story in their mind. They've already chosen what to believe. And so I just started focusing on me and doing some really deep healing work through meditation and journaling and really just trying to find joy in myself and in my life and like honing into the manifestation process also, right? Like if I wanted somebody else to come into my life, what did this person need to have and who did they need to be? Because I didn't want to end up in something that I just experienced ever again.
Yeah.
And it was like such a powerful moment because I finally recognized how much of just all these beliefs and fears had me walking through life in a way that wasn't my true self.
Yeah.
Which was actually kind of scary to realize too, because it's like, wow, it's that easy. It's that easy to like become somebody that we really aren't. And so as I went through that journey and I really started focusing on me and figuring out what made me happy and what I wanted in my life and what I wanted my life to look like, I then reconnected with somebody I went to high school with, and we fell madly in love. And it was like this perfect relationship because he had all the qualities of everything that I had ever wanted in somebody and truly made me happy and like allowed me to be my best self without any fear of being judged by him or without any fear of like my safety being in harm's way. And it just felt good in all that aspect. And so we ended up getting married in November of 2018. I got pregnant in February of 2019. And then he passed away in July of 2019 when I was 6 months pregnant. And so now it was like this next level moment of trauma for myself in a relationship, but in a whole new way, right? Because now I had this crazy abusive relationship that I healed from mentally and physically and emotionally. And now I'm going through this grieving process and I'm having to heal emotionally and mentally while physically growing and creating a child and having to be really conscious of that. And that was hard. That was really hard because I had to be aware of everything I was feeling. Right. And then as I went through that process and I was really against ever dating or being with somebody because I was terrified, right? Like these 2 relationships had such an impact on me. And now I need to be really mindful of not only myself, but now I have this beautiful little girl that I need to be mindful of too. And about 1.5 years after he passed away, I finally was at a point where I was kind of ready to start discovering what it might look like to have somebody in my life, because there was a part of me that was really lonely in the aspect of just having a partner and somebody there. But again, I had to be really honest with myself. Right? I didn't want to like just fall into something that wasn't right for me just out of the sake of being lonely. And so I got really clear again, like what I wanted, what type of person I wanted in my life and in my daughter's life. And another friend that I went to high school with who was in my friends group and we hung out a lot. It just finally came to this fruition where it was like, you know what, like, let's give this a try. And now he has really stepped up into this incredible man who is there and so supportive of everything I'm doing and wanting to create. And also the dad that my daughter deserves and gets to have such an incredible bond and relationship with now.
That's so amazing.
So that was a lot.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that, because I think it's so empowering it's so easy for us to forget sometimes everything that we have in life, you know? And so these kind of moments and these situations really bring back to how good we actually have it.
Yeah. Right. It's so
Being
easy
thankful for
for
it.
us mentally to just focus on like the bad and what went wrong or what isn't right in our life right now, rather than really honing in and focusing in on like what is going right or what is good or how we can make it better.
Yeah. So how do you maintain now a great intimate relationship with your husband after going through such such big experiences in your life?
Mhm. I can definitely say that, especially in the beginning of us dating, there were a lot of trigger moments, right? There were a lot of moments that like things happen or occurred, or he would say something and like not even in a wrong way, right? But I just had this attachment and this fear within me that like, oh my gosh, okay, like we'll call it red flags, right? Red flag when it wasn't a red flag in reality. Like he was just being himself and being his personality. But in my mind, because I was still such in this fragile and emotional state and worried about the outcome or how this relationship would be, that I would like draw back and I would hold out and I wouldn't fully give myself in the relationship because I was afraid of getting hurt again. And once I recognized that for myself and I had a conversation with him and I was like, I just need you to know, like, you know, my past, you know, everything I've experienced, you know, what I've gone through. So when like you do this or you say something in that tone, like my body immediately freaks out. And I know that for you, right, like you're saying it in a joking way, or you're not even meaning anything by it. But my body automatically just goes into a fear state. And once we had that conversation, it allowed us to get to a heightened intimacy level because now we were communicating on that emotional sense of this is what I've been through. And when something like this happens, my body reacts. And then I get into my own head and then I start thinking things. And then I might react or say things that I don't really mean, right? Which I think is so important in relationships, is to have that base of communication to be able to say those things so that you can really understand. And so that was a big thing for us, was having to like break down the barriers of fear of being able to speak our truth to create that sense of intimacy. And then beyond that, like we don't go a day without making sure that like we are having our time of just being with us. Right. And that doesn't mean like having sex every day or having intimacy in that way. Right. It just means like being able to sit on the couch and be like touching each other, whether that just be cuddled up or me laying on him or him laying on me, whatever it is, just creating this moment of just togetherness that is so important. And we make it also a point to like not go to bed without each other, which I think is really important too, because it's like, okay, we're starting the day together. Right? We're starting the day by kissing, saying good morning, have a good day, see you later. Now I get to work from home. So he's gone before I'm out of bed, but you know, having that moment in the morning where it's like, good morning, I love you, kiss goodbye. And then going to bed at night, not him staying up watching TV, but it's like, okay, are we ready? Okay, let's go and lay in bed and we can watch TV in bed, cuddle in bed some more, whatever it may be, which is starting the day and ending the day together has been really important for us too.
I love that. I think that's a really good tool, because like you said, when we're so busy working and doing all the things, it's hard to be synchronized like that. So finding those moments, right, to be together and keep that intimacy going. And I was wondering, like, when your body would trigger you like that, right? It's almost like the body is triggering you, like, hey, something here is going on. What are tools that you can help, besides obviously talking about it? What can you do for yourself if you feel triggered in the moment, to kind of work through that? Do you have anything?
Mhm. I had to learn to not react immediately off that trigger and first take a moment for myself, whether that be like excusing myself from us being in that moment together, or even just being like, I'll be right back. I gotta go to the bathroom, like whatever it is, right? To give myself that moment of break for me. So then I could sit and ask myself, okay, take a deep breath, center into me, right? Let me get out of this feeling that I'm having towards him right now, get into me and my body. Okay, what am I feeling? Why am I experiencing this? What is going on for me right now in this moment? And allowing myself to then get into me and even ask, where is this showing up in my body? Right? Is it this feeling in my stomach? Is it this feeling in my throat? Am I like getting a headache? Like, what is it? And then tapping into that part of my body and literally asking it, right? Like, what are you trying to show me? What are you trying to tell me? Like, what am I supposed to be hearing right now? And it always just connected back to like fear. You're afraid. You're afraid of getting hurt again. You're afraid of opening up. And when I recognized that that trigger was outside of him, it made it a lot easier to have that communication to talk about.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your story and being here. If our listeners want to find you and what you do online, where would be the best place to find you?
Yes, you can find me. Instagram is probably the place that I am the most active. I share the good, the bad, the ugly over there. We hold nothing back. So you can find me at the Boss Lady Agency on Instagram, or you can check out my website, bosslady.agency.com.
Love it. Well, thank you for being here, and thank you guys for listening, and I will see you guys next week. Thank you for tuning in to the Moms Talk Sex podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please share with your friends, like, and support our community by joining our Facebook group, Moms Talk Sex, or follow us on Instagram at Morph Healing. If you're interested in being a guest on our show, send us an email. Thank you for joining, and we'll see you next week.